You're listening to The Art of Imperfect Adulting. I'm your host, Amy Stone. Here, I share stories from real people navigating the adventure that I call adulting. Are you ready? Me too. Let's do this. Hello, friends. All right, in this episode, I'm going to introduce you to Leigh Lincoln. And we chat because Leigh shared with me that she accidentally wrote her first novel. Yeah, accidentally. Honestly, I just really was curious how somebody goes about accidentally writing a book. But this is a part of a bigger conversation about finding strength and power and authority in your own voice. And we also talk about what is the best footwear for hiking on the beach and singing in the grocery store. So if you're ready, I'm ready. Let's go. Leigh Lincoln, welcome to the Art of Imperfect Adulting.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so happy you're here. Are you ready for a fun chat today?
I am so ready.
Yeah, this is going to be great. All right, I start almost every interview by talking to my guests and asking them where they are talking to me from today. So, where are you today? What part of the world are you in?
I am in southern Georgia today.
Yeah. There you go, Southern Georgia, which is not too far from me. I'm also in the South. I'm so far south that I'm in the tropics, not the deep South, but that is where we both are and where we call home. So I want to learn a little bit more about you personally before we dig into the topic of the day. Not like super deep or anything, but could you tell us a little bit about yourself outside of work, outside of your family? But just, something, maybe a hobby or something you enjoy, something just about you to connect before we get started, as little or as much as you want.
Well, I love hiking and I love beaches and I love to combine the two. And so I love going to beaches and taking long, long walks, preferably barefoot, which is, yeah, I'm just one of those people, right? So it doesn't matter where I am, whether it's a sea beach, whether it's a river beach, whether it's a lake beach. I don't care. Just give me a beach. Let me go wander.
Very good. So I was the first thing when you said hiking and beaches, my immediate thought was I wondered what you were wearing on your shoes because there's all kind of things. Some people will run on packed sand in shoes, and I like to walk barefoot, like right close to the water, which is easier on a soft sandy beach than a rocky river beach, I think. And it's just a lot of choices. But initially, I was wondering whether or not you were gonna say you were out there in hiking shoes in the beach, which would have been interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. All right, very good. So now we'll get to the topic of the day, which is you proposed the topic of talking about how you accidentally wrote your first novel and how this led you into realizing that your voice mattered. So does that sound like something fun to talk about today?
Uh, This is something I talk about quite a lot because it kind of throws people. People are like, wait, how do you accidentally write a book?
Yeah, that is one of my very early questions. But first, I want to help set the time frame. How long ago was this?
It was in 2016.
2016, and we're in 2025, so almost 10 years.
Yeah.
Almost 10 years ago. All right. So let's back up a little bit further before we dig into actually writing the book. When you think of yourself as a kid, maybe middle school, high school age, did you have dreams of being a novelist or a writer, or was there something else that was on your future plan?
I don't really think I ever thought of myself as being anything other than a mom. But again, back in the day, I'm old, I know. Uh, Women were supposed to be caregivers. So I think I always thought I would be a wife and a mother. And I don't think I really had any big goals in life. And then at some point, I thought I was going to be a minister, and that kind of didn't turn out. So, but I was a mom. I still am a mom. I have a kid, but
All right. So the path that was laid out for you was, what are the words that we could use to describe this? Well, let's say traditional, right? The
yes,
traditional path that was offered to you was one of parenting and caregiving, and that's what you thought about. And what's interesting about that, like now that you're adultier, is the idea that that was that was 100% of what you were expected to do. Like that would be your whole life because raising children predominantly is like 25-ish years, right? And for some of that, they're pretty independent, right? So the idea that it would be all you would do is kind of a crazy concept once you get past it. Doesn't feel like a crazy concept when they're small and can't do anything for themselves. Got to just throw that in there. Like then it does take it's all hands on deck. Small
Right.
people are not self-reliant. Okay, so now let's dive in to this idea of accidentally writing a book. So writing a book is something that lots and lots of people want to do. It's a thing that not everybody does do. It's a thing that is perhaps easier to make official in modern times with self-publishing than it was in like the 1960s or whatever. But still, most people don't do it.
It's not easy to do.
Well, yeah. So just did you sit down with like a post-it note at your kitchen table and write a book? Like how does this accidentally happen?
No, for years, I was involved in a lot of community service organizations, mostly around homelessness and poverty. And I volunteered for a whole bunch of different things. And so I would go to all these community meetings. And at one point, I went to this community meeting and the topic was really interesting to me. And I was trying to get my point across, so I kept raising my hand, and the guy who was running the meeting just completely ignored me. He pointed to the politician, to the businessmen, all the people in town that had standing, and he just ignored me. And at the end of the meeting, I went up to him and I tried to get my point across, and he completely shut me down. And he gave me all these excuses why I did not matter to him at all. I was just a woman, I was just a single mother. I was a single mother who homeschooled at that. And I was just a volunteer. I'd never had a real job. I didn't have a degree, and I did not matter one bit to this man. And as I angrily stomped home from that meeting, I realized that he was not the only one who had treated me this way for something like 30 years. I was irrelevant, and it didn't matter that I'd been doing all of this work for years because it was all volunteer and I was all of these things that he listed. No one cared about me at all. I did not matter. My voice didn't matter. My opinion did not matter. And so when I went home, because I was a homeschooling single mother, of course, what do we have at home? A gazillion empty notebooks, right? Because we had all
Okay.
the things, right? So I grabbed one of those books and I just started pouring out my heart in it. And I just started just writing everything that made me mad because I realized there were a lot of things that made me mad. And after several months, I started looking over all of these notebooks that I'd filled, and there was a lot, right? I had a lot to say. When I
And
finally allowed myself,
this sounds like this was journaling at the start, if you were to
it
categorize it,
was, yes, it was journaling
or
at the
free
start. And
writing.
yeah, and I'd never journaled before this. And when I really looked at what I'd written after several months, I realized that at some point I had flipped from writing about myself to writing first person narrative from the perspective of a homeless woman, which I'd worked with thousands of homeless women in 30 something years at that point. And I realized that I don't know exactly when I flipped because I wasn't writing dates on the pages, but I do understand why I flipped because all of those women that I'd worked with for all of those years felt the same way I did, devalued, ignored, in,
Invisible.
invisible. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So, yeah, I accidentally wrote a book. I had no intentions of writing a book. I don't know exactly when I did it. I just know I did it.
So let's back up a teeny tiny bit. So you were involved in community organizations as a volunteer for homeless, or we would say, and the more contemporary way we're talking about this community is unhoused and the housing challenge market, right? People who really struggle with finding secure housing in your community as a volunteer.
Yep.
One of the things that I really think is interesting about that is that this is the advice that we give to women who are in the ages of raising our kids that if you want to make friends, if you want to keep your skills sharp, what you should do is go and volunteer and give your work for free to the organizations in the community. And I believe in volunteering, and I think that volunteering is very good. But I think that one of the worst piece of advice that we can give people is that there's some point where this volunteer experience becomes commercially relevant. I have literally never, ever, 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 ever seen in all of my years somebody who's working for free be reached out to and be like, oh, you know what? Now I'd like to pay you. Come join my corporate staff because you've given. And it's something that, definitely can make me very angry if I think about it too much because we really do exploit this very smart, very capable group of adults by putting them in a position where we expect them to work for free. You've got people who are working in marketing, in finance, in promotion, in logistics, in operations. All of these are real jobs. And you're like, yeah, please do this for free and we're not going to take you seriously. And then I think there's a lot of people listening who have been in that situation that they are very knowledgeable as a experienced worker, like as a person who's been through an experience, and they have someone who's in authority just completely devalue their experience, their life experience, and ignore them in lieu of somebody else who's got a certificate from somewhere.
Yeah. And uh, over the years, as I've shared my story, it's amazing how many women who have said, oh, yeah, something similar to what you just shared has happened to me. And I'm like, why is this a thing? Like, why do women especially get treated like this? I mean, it's just wrong on so many levels. And it really frustrates me, because I thought I was the only one that this happened to. And then I hear this all the time. And I'm like, how is this a thing? I mean, we talk about, women are now on the same level as men. No, they're not. Really, we're not.
Well, one of the things that I always tell people is so funny is that I was working and then I had a kid in a stroller, and it was like crazy to go from like a working professional who had like a certain amount of self-confidence and respect and like a position of authority, and then like just a few weeks later, walking through some place with a stroller, and people were speaking to me as if I needed basic help with like just fundamental things like math and like logistics and opening doors. And I was like, I did not like, why did it become this assumption that I'm just unable to make it through the world now that I have a stroller in front of me, And then on the other hand, there are many situations with a small child in the stroller where I was very thankful for support because you can't open doors and push a stroller at the same time unless it's an automatic door, So it is a weird, weird thing. And I also hilariously one time I was called into school for one of my kids and I was coming from like a workout and it was a big group of people. I walked into an office with a big group of people and I had on like a completely inappropriate outfit, like, bike shorts. And like I was sweaty because they had called and said, it's important, please come down. And they asked me a question and I like paused and I said in my exact words was like, okay, I was like, listen, I know that I don't look the part here, but I'm just going to need you guys to take my word for it and take me seriously, even though like I showed up in my workout outfit. You called me, this is what I was wearing. I came because I respect you. Please don't discount me because I'm here wearing like my gym outfit. I don't know if they did or not, but I gave it my best shot. All right. So this starts as a journal and you pouring out your heart, which is a wonderful thing. You begin to shift to writing narrative stories based on the people that you had come into contact as a volunteer. Do you remember what the time frame was between you had this showdown in this community meeting with this not nice guy and when you had a manuscript? Like how long did it actually take you time-wise to come up with what you'd call a manuscript for your first book?
Well, I journaled for about 3 months before I looked at what I had and realized that I had accidentally switched and written this story. And then I worked with a local writers group for a couple of months and got it cleaned up a little bit. And then I well, I'm not going to say I worked with an editor. I fought with an editor because that was my first book. And I just was like, well, no one's going to read it anyways because everybody's been ignoring me for years. So it doesn't have to be perfect. And so I did that for a couple of months. And then it came out in the fall of 2016. So overall, it was from the day the fight happened until when it was released was something like 7 months. It was really quick. And none of
That's
my other books,
fast.
yeah, none of my other books have been that fast because I've learned a lot. But again, when I threw that baby book into the world, I was like, yeah, I'll be lucky if I sell 10 to 20 copies. I'll raise maybe $10 for charity. I will call it a day, right? Because no one is going to buy this book. No one's going to care about this book because no one cares about me. I still had that mindset. So I really didn't care if it was perfect or pretty. And so that first book, Road Home, is a hot mess. And over the years, several people have told me I need to go back in there and like really clean it up professionally because I really didn't that first time. And I'm like, no, I am proud of it the way it is. And I don't care if it's a hot mess because it shows my journey as an author and it made a statement. So I'm like, no, I'm not going back and fixing it.
So I think that's amazing because I like on one hand, what I hear you saying is, and I think that it's very valid, is that you still were very much in a state of mind where you're like, this is not important enough for me to put the time and money into doing. And we don't, that's not a great place to be in terms of personal mindset. But on the other hand, I really think that there's a lot to be said for the fact that people can get stuck in trying to make things perfect and trying to make things professional before there's any reason to do that. So, investing, build an entirely professional, office to write the book instead of writing it at your kitchen table. Checking the formatting for 6 months instead of showing it to somebody and letting them read for the content. And so there's the flip side of that is the advantage of get it out there, like ship it before it's finished. And I think that it shows what does it show? Motivation from you, I guess, or a desire to complete. Would you say you're a person that completes tasks, that you're motivated by getting things done?
Yeah, I'm more motivated by getting things done and less by getting things perfect. I'm, as a person, I'm very spontaneous and a total hot mess, and I'm perfectly okay with that. Just don't come into my house.
Just, or if you do, don't bring a camera. Don't bring Architectural Digest to your house.
Yeah, just if you're a guest in my house, just accept that it's a hot mess and that I'm happy.
In my house, we have an ongoing, perpetual discussion where when people are coming over, there are people in my family who want to remove all signs that anybody has ever lived here. And I believe in cleaning up the house when you're having guests. Like, I think that's very nice. And obviously, like all of those things. But I also don't have any desire to pretend that I don't actually live here. Like, if you come and there's like a mixing stand in my kitchen, I'm like, yeah, because I mix things. Like, this is not a museum. This is the kitchen.
Right? There's no dirty dishes. We're all good.
Right,
The
exactly.
toilet's really clean. We're all good.
Exactly. Right. There's a line, but not everybody is like that. I never once have worried about somebody inspecting my baseboards in my house. If they do, that says about them. That's talking about them, not about me. All right. So,
Exactly.
all right. So I got the impression from when you submitted this topic, that you did not feel like you had a lot of support around you when you were doing this. And so I did want to ask you how you figured out the steps to go through and write and edit and publish and promote this book.
Well, um, I went to the local library and because libraries are great. So when I realized I had the beginning of a manuscript or maybe all of a manuscript, as it turned out, I asked the local library, is there a writer's group? And there was one at the local library. And then the writers group, they were like, well, we can only help you so much. You really need an editor. And then they had an idea of how to find an editor. So it was just by asking questions because really I had no idea what I'm doing. And I 6 books in, I kind of still don't really know what I'm doing. And that's okay. Because again, I don't have a degree. I've never had a real job. So that's okay. Um, and And for marketing, I think a lot of authors have no idea how to market their books. Doesn't matter how many books they have. So, um, but here's the thing: you publish a book. It doesn't matter whether it's a novel or nonfiction. You're instantly an expert in whatever the topic is. And so, ironically, all of those people who've been ignoring me for years. Well, I published a book about a homeless woman, and I started getting asked to speak on homelessness.
All right.
And so that marketed the book, right? Hey, we can have her come and speak because clearly she knows a lot about homelessness, right? She published a book on it. Um, Hi, okay, sure. So, I kind of like fell into a lot of things just by accident or by asking good questions. And I think a lot of authors, this is kind of how they work things out, because there aren't a lot of people that really can, without paying a ton of money. I don't think a lot of authors can really, get the good answers to their questions. So I think a lot of them just figure it out on trial and error.
I think I mean, that's the dirty secret of making it through adulthood that there's a point where most of us don't know what we're doing and we just have to have the courage to try. So, and figure out if it works. So I do think though that there's a choice that you made in there that shows a lot about your fortitude as a person because you could have looked down at your journal and said, "Oh, look, there's a story," and just said, "Yay, all done. Not going to do anything else." And so what was your thinking, if you remember, because you might not. Sometimes these are little tiny mental shifts that we don't pay any attention to. Do you remember what were you thinking when you were like, I'm going to go to the library and see if I can find a writers group? Like what was your very, very early little nugget of a shift when you saw that there was a story?
Well, my thing was is maybe I could turn this into something and I could raise a few bucks for charity because I've been trying to raise money for charity for years, and I was like, well, maybe this is another way I could do that. And that
Okay.
was my whole thing. you know I wasn't looking to make a ton of money with it. I wasn't looking for anything for myself or fame or recognition or anything. Like a lot of people write books because they want to be famous or make a ton of money, right? But that wasn't my goal, and it still isn't my goal. I still sell my books and give a large portion of the proceeds of the books to charity, which kind of throws people because they're still like, wait, what? And they're like, your motivation is very different. And yeah, my motivation is always really different than I think a lot of people's.
Yeah. But it should come, it's yours. It doesn't have to match other people's, right? So what kind of support now that you've done this 6 times? So this is slightly a ridiculous question because I'm going to ask you about something that like as if you could rewrite the past, which you can't. But for people listening who are representative of an earlier stage you, somebody who's dreaming of writing a book and has the benefit of hearing from you before they get started, what kind of support do you wish you had had as a new and emerging author who had an idea but no idea what to do?
I think every author really does need to be part of a writer's group. You really do need that support of other authors. Doesn't matter what genre they're writing in, but being able to bounce ideas off of other creatives is so critical. I know the writers group that I'm currently part of. We do role plays together. We do we do various little technique plays together. And if you're not a creative, sometimes when you try to bounce ideas off people, people kind of roll their eyes and go, I don't get it at all. Like, if you're trying to, do something creative, like pick a word and then start a story with that word. Um, People are like, I just don't get why you would even do that. Well, it's to try to really get your brain focused on something than the story that you're working on. Because sometimes in your stories, you get really stuck and you really need something to get yourself out of your own head. And being in a group of other creatives, they get why you're having issues, they get why you're having problems, and they can really help you rethink things. And I think that's really critical.
I do too. And I think it's, writers groups are writers groups, but I think that it's very, very true for a wide variety of people who are creating things. The other thing that's interesting when you get a group of people who are actually doing the work of creating stuff as opposed to evaluating and judging, right? So, like a room full of editors versus a room full of writers, or a room full of editors instead of a room full of like photographers, is they tend to be incredibly forgiving and supportive of making mistakes. Like it's a place where you can go in with something that's like so beginner, and the people be like, oh, look what you did. You made this thing. You put these words on this piece of paper. Good for you. Maybe try again.
Yeah, because our group that I'm part of right now, we never bash each other's work. We just say, well, that's a really good beginning. Have you ever thought of?
Yeah,
And we build each other up. We don't tear each other down. Which an editor, their job is to tear it apart and tell you what you did wrong. That's their whole entire
that's their whole
job.
job, right? That's their whole
It's a
job.
different focus and mindset.
It is, but if you
Support
mix,
job.
yeah, exactly. And if you mix them up, you can find yourself wishing for a new group, a new group. So yeah, so I think that's a really good thing. Do you have any? So you found your writers group through the library. How
My
else? Like,
first one,
yeah.
my one that I have now, I found a different way because I have moved since I wrote my first book. But
And how did you like? So is it an in-person group? Like these are people you know face to face, or is it an online sort of situation?
the group I'm in now is an online group because I travel so much, I can no longer do an in-person group.
And so this is an online group. And do you have a suggestion that you want to offer people for how to find a welcoming writers group?
I found the one I'm currently in through Facebook. There are several that are fairly active on Facebook. The one I am part of is not accepting people, or I would tell people about it. But there are several on Facebook, and that is a good way to find writers group. And of course, your local library. There are several small community centers that have writers groups. So there's various ways to find them.
Okay. All right. Those are all very helpful suggestions. Thank you for sharing those. Okay. So, because I think that sometimes when you're outside of it, knowing where to start looking can be the hump. Do I walk into an English class? Like, do I ask my high school writing teacher? Like, what do I do? All right. So now let's talk about the shift between, and I think you've alluded to at least the beginning of this, how writing the first book eventually turned into being able to convince yourself or owning the fact that your voice matters. So you told us the story of being in the meeting and realizing that the guy running the meeting or the guy you were talking to was not going to pay attention to what you had to say. That sounds like it felt terrible. You shared that you realized, and if I'm speaking for you and it's not right, correct me, you began to realize that that was something that was echoing through other parts of your life, that you were sort of surrounded by people who were not valuing your voice. How does writing the book then lead you to discovering that your voice matters overall?
Well, I think the big part of it was realizing when people read that first book, Road Home, and then I started getting feedback, and people are like, wow, this book is really powerful. This book moved me. I saw something in myself that I didn't like because of something you wrote in this book, right? And I realized that I was changing hearts and minds, and that wasn't my intention, right? I was just throwing this book out there. and and then getting asked to speak, and being asked to be part of panels to discuss issues and topics around homelessness and poverty. And I was like, all of a sudden people were wanting to hear what I wanted to say. And then that was so validating to me, and to realize that I did matter, and I had always mattered. It was just an issue of getting that breakthrough, of somehow getting people to see that I wasn't this invisible little mouse in the corner.
Wow. Okay. So I love the piece that you said where it was that you had actually always mattered. It wasn't writing the book that shifted who you were or the value of what you were saying, but that it would had always been there. So this next part of this question might be a little too personal and you can tell me to buzz off, but do you have an idea of the origin story or where it began, the concept and the feeling inside you that your voice was not one that mattered might have come from?
Sure, but I just think that because I was always at home and I was always behind the scenes. And I think a lot of it is the cultural values that we have, that just certain women are put in this box. And I was clearly in that box for so many years. But I think it's the way our society views women.
Okay.
And and so I think it was partially just my age too, of how society views women. And you know, women just shouldn't be vocal, because if they're vocal, they're pushy.
It is, yes. It is, well, and there, we get nicknames too. We get
Yeah.
nicknames if we speak up. They're
So
not all,
I just always was in the background. I was, always behind the scenes. And for a long time, that was okay because that was a woman's role.
and you thought you were following the rules. You were doing the right
I
things.
thought I was following the rules. But but I realized that that was not okay. Through the whole process of getting this book out there, I realized that's not okay. And and that should never have been okay. And so I've just now gotten to the point where I throw out all the rules. I just do whatever I want to do, and I just don't care what people think anymore.
Right. Right. And so, and I say right because I've heard this from different people throughout the show, throughout my life, throughout my experience. But there's this realization that the rules that you're following may not actually have been written to help you.
Yeah.
And so then should we follow them? Like, is it for, like who's this for? Who's this for? And is it to my advantage? All right. So I keep mentioning that this was your first book. And you've mentioned that you have other books. You've gone on to write a few more books, six more books. So,
Six in total. Well, six novels in total. There's a few other things, but six novels, and that's what I really focus on, is my novels.
and so go ahead and tell people where they can find your books if they would like to buy them and read them and how they can find you online.
The easiest way is to go to my website, leiglincolnauthor.com. All of the books are listed there, and all the various ways to purchase them are there. If you purchase the print books on my website, they're always signed by me. No matter where I travel, I have a way to do that, which is really cool and fun. So
Very cool. And you have a special offer for the listeners. Your website is in the show notes and in the email that I will send out to the subscriber. You have a special offer for the listeners, which is a free short story. The title is Ryan, and you can get that at LeighlIncolnAuthor.com. Get your free short story. So I put that link in the show notes and it comes in the email. For everybody, Leigh, I want to thank you very much for that generous offer, first of all. And for everybody who's listening and watching, if that offer sounds good to you, but you're driving or you're out for a walk or you're doing laundry or you're mopping the floor or you're talking to your friends, whatever it is, don't worry about remembering the details. Join the Imperfect Adulting email community and we send that directly to your inbox. It's absolutely the easiest way to do that. So now, Leigh, are you ready for the final three questions, the rapid fire fun questions?
okay, awesome.
Let's do it. Let's do it. The idea is these are just for fun. Just say whatever comes to mind in a few words. I write these before we have the interview, so sometimes they're completely off topic, and other times I kind of accidentally nail something that we talk about. All right. So imagine that you're invited over to a friend's house for dinner, and they say that they want to cook your favorite meal for you. What do you ask for?
Paella.
Paella. I love that that was instant. There's a couple different kinds of paella. Which kind of paella do you like?
Um, I really like the seafood paella, preferably like from the Canaries, that has the octopus and the squid and the shrimp in it.
Yep.
But I know some people that kind of grosses them out, but it's really yummy. So we're all good.
I have a very close friend who has a paella catering business. She comes and prepares the paella live at events, which is an all day thing depending on when it is. And so she'll do that one. That's exactly, she'll do that one. She'll do another type of protein. She does a veggie one and other things like that. Okay. So,
Well, because
because some
different parts of
people,
Spain do paella very differently. It depends
yeah.
on where you are in Spain. When you order paella, what you get.
And not everybody likes to see shrimp in different forms. Like people are not everybody likes that.
Well, you can go to a different part of Spain and get chicken. You can go to a different part of Spain and you can get sausage in it. So you just have to wander around Spain and order paella in different places.
I wonder if there's a tour for that. I wonder if somebody has like a Spain pie. That is, that's okay. My mind, I'm off topic. I'm off topic. That does happen. Okay. Leigh, do you have a favorite flower or plant?
Yes, roses, preferably pink or pink and white striped.
Love it. Love it. If you are in the grocery store shopping and a song comes on, the grocery store music that is like that doesn't have the lyrics, but it's playing the things, and it's a song do you sing along softly in public or do you not even notice the music that's playing in the grocery store?
I usually not only start singing along softly, but I quite frankly start dancing like I did the other day, and this guy was laughing at me.
That is similar to what happened to me a little while ago, which inspired this question. I was in the grocery store, not even thinking about it, and there were several of us singing along in the same aisle in the store, and I was just like laughing. I was like, "This is really funny. This is really funny." It's just really funny. That's it, Leigh Lincoln. Thank you so much for being an amazing guest on the Art of Imperfect Adulting.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.
Thank you for listening today. I hope that you enjoy the show. And before I go, I want to encourage you to become a bigger part of the conversation. Obviously, subscribe wherever you're listening to the show. Listen to more episodes. That'd be great. Again, please write a review and tell your friends about the show. That truly is a great help for getting the show in front of new people. Okay, but more fun for you yourself. Head over to imperfectadulting.com and join the email community. You'll get some free stuff right away, and that way you'll begin to get the emails about the podcast. This includes the links for the special offers from the guests, and it's the only way to get that. Also, if you aren't in the mood to listen, I actually include an article directly in those emails. Whee! Now, if you love this and you crave more time with me, Amy, as a coach, a mentor, or just adultier adult, numero uno, check out The Village. If you have a story you want to share with the listeners, I'd love to hear from you. I have an open application. Just let me know you want it. And that's a wrap for today. Until next time, remember, the journey is the destination. Ralph Waldo Emerson said that, not me. Well, until just now, I did just say it. But what I want you to hear today is that if your adulting journey isn't going the way you expected, that may not mean that you're lost. It may just mean that you're on your way. This is Amy Stone, signing off. The Imperfect Adulting podcast is created and produced by Amy Stone and Amy Says So. Anything expressed on this show is offered as entertainment, and the views of the guests may not always represent the ideas and viewpoints of the host. That's me. Amy does not intend or hold herself out to provide professional advice or recommendations of any kind. In the end, you and you alone need to make those kinds of decisions based on your personal and individual situation, needs, circumstances, and comfort level.